Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Swaim Strategies, a consulting firm dedicated to nonprofit fundraising events. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Hello, and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. Today, Kristen and I want to talk a little bit about future-proofing your mission. We feel like there is a changing tide happening in the nonprofit sector right now with grant funding changing, with donor behavior changing. And so we had an opportunity to sit down at the RAISE conference and talk to a lot of experts about where to focus energy and what to be focused in on right now. So we're excited to bring you this episode that was recorded live at the RAISE conference. We have a lot of different experts joining the stage with us today.
I was not able to go to RAISE this year. How was the conference?
It was great. It was in San Antonio. It's a conference that's produced with our partners at OneCause.
Right.
And it's a unique space in that it works to address needs and education in the community around fundraising in general, around leadership, and around fundraising events. And so we presented a case study about hybrid events with the fabulous Dale Johannes and Mary Elizabeth, and talked a lot about how we're utilizing hybrid events a lot right now, especially as we start looking at the fact that a lot of organizations have donor bases that travel, donor bases that aren't always able to be in the one city on the one date.
Yep.
And so it was fun to be able to join everyone and talk about the hybrid space. They have announced that next year's conference will be in Chicago, so we hope folks will join us and see us there. We also hope folks will join us at Elevate, where the OneCause team will be on the ground with us. So Elevate is March 3rd and 4th in 2026. It is fundraising event school. It is really intended to help you learn how to grow your fundraising event, trends in fundraising, how to take the tools from your fundraising event and adopt them to other platforms. So we hope folks will check it out, take a look, swaimstrategies.com, and register.
You can join us in person in Portland, or you can join us online virtually from anywhere.
Yes.
That's the beauty of virtual events. Sam, talk to us about who we're going to hear from today.
Well, I got to talk to a number of presenters and speakers and ask them to share a little bit about their work, about what they think is the most important thing right now to be focusing in on to future-proof your mission. And also to talk about everything from like social media to AI technology. And as Nathan Chappell said, the bits and bots of being more human. So let's dive in and we'll hear from the experts. I am here with Barbara O'Reilly at the RAISE conference, and we are live right before your session. And you are here to talk all about fundraising in a time of crisis.
Yes.
So I'm very excited to have you joining me. I wanted to first ask that you introduce a little bit about your consulting work, your expertise, your teaching, and specifically about Windmill Hill Consulting.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
So I am, like you, sort of a career fundraiser. I've been in this space 30 some years. I sort of stopped counting at 30. I'm sure you can appreciate. I spent the first half of my career in-house in big organizations, and then for the last 16 years have led Windmill Hill Consulting as a consultant. We work with organizations to really give them the tools, the confidence, the resources that they need to be able to raise more money and feel that they can build stronger donor relationships. Donor retention is such a big problem in our sector. Yeah. And that's one of the things that we really lead with when we're working with organizations is not just how they can raise more money, but what are all the tools and the infrastructure that they need to have in place and the mindset really to be able to do that. Because it isn't just about hitting dollar goals. That's important. But it's about having really strong attention on donor retention. How do we engage them in a way that leads to upgraded giving? And how do we really activate all of our stakeholders and volunteers so that everybody creates that sense of culture of giving and culture of gratitude?
It's so important right now.
For sure.
We were just talking before we started that we've seen that need growing to really create kind of safety nets.
Yes.
And so you're presenting here at the conference about how to raise money in a time of crisis. I feel like we're in this world that we kind of are repeating 2020 over again, where people are trying to figure out how to do new things what is the thing you think folks should be focusing on right now?
So I spent 5 years as a disaster fundraiser, first at the American Red Cross National Headquarters during Katrina, and then helping to launch the Center for Disaster Philanthropy. So in a lot of ways,
You are the person for this time.
I will admit that my sort of that muscle memory went right into action during the pandemic, during all of this year so far, which the mind that sort of all right, what are the steps that we need to have in place? How do we think about the messaging, who to activate? How do we communicate with our donors in a clear and transparent way? All of those things that I learned literally doing the work during some of the biggest crises in our natural disasters, and as I'll talk about in my session, some internally created disasters. All of that really comes into play in fundraising during a crisis. So it's about being vulnerable. It's about being clear. It's not putting your head in the sand. It's about having the systems in place. And for so many organizations, during the time of disaster is not, or a crisis is not the time to say, you should have had this or you should have had that. But you can start to knowing you need to have an operation plan in place and that to be able to quickly activate, or knowing you need to have people who are, who will be your spokespeople, or you need to have certain key messages or holding statements. All of those. And most importantly, you need to have an open line of communication with your donors, because your donors want to be able to step up and help. And if you're trying to go about as business as usual, they're going to wonder, well, how is this affecting you? Or they may not even think, is this affecting you? And they're going to go about their busy lives. So this is all about for some, it may be building the plane while they're flying it during this storm, through this storm. But for others, it will be, okay, how do we create those common message points and the strategy that really keeps our organization connected to these donors and any stakeholder, frankly, even if they're not a donor.
I think it's so important for folks to keep moving forward. The wait and see. We discovered during COVID a lot of folks that moved into wait and see no longer are around, and those organizations that kept fundraising came out better afterwards.
Yes,
so
1,000%.
I think that is an important message about being able to continue to tell your story and talk to donors about what's really happening.
That's right.
Honestly.
That's it. And, it's especially, natural disasters aside, organizations will have some sort of leadership crisis, some other external factor that's going to maybe threaten their brand, their reputation, call into question something of them. Certainly 2025 has been, every kind of unexpected disaster, right, and crisis. Yeah. So the organizations that have the courage to put one step forward and another step forward and reflect internally, how do we get through this? What are the, one of the slides is about imagine the unimaginable, because this year is living proof of the unimaginable. So how do we take all of the possible worst case scenarios and role play what our organization needs to be doing, how that will be affected or not, and what are the steps that we need to have in place. It's hard work, but I think every organization is going to be different in terms of their bandwidth, capacity, their courage to think in that big way. But now is the moment to be doing that and to be constantly course correcting and communicating. Because you're right, the organizations in 2020 that stopped communicating, that were like, we're going to wait because we don't know what's going on. Our donors are busy and affected with all of this too. We're going to wait this out. What happened to them, right? So many either closed or it took them a really long time to rebound. Yeah. So it moving forward is better than staying in one place.
Nathan Chappell, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to Raise Nation Radio. Excited to have you join us here at the Raise Conference.
Yeah.
So for our folks that don't know Nathan Chappell, I want to make sure that folks get to know your work a little bit. So author, you have 2 books right now that are focused on AI in the nonprofit sector. An AI inventor.
Yeah.
I love that title for you. And you work a lot with Virtuous. Yeah. I would love to have you introduce a little bit about your work and the focus that you bring to the nonprofit sector.
Yeah. I mean, I think to distill it down, I was a 20-year accidental fundraiser but earlier on was a technologist. And then 2017 really got interested in how AI was going to be how AI would shape the future of philanthropy. And so I did a TEDx on that in like 2018, started 2 companies, and now serve as the chief AI officer at Virtuous. So that's formally my real job. But outside of that, I've written 2 books and do a lot of thought leadership and public speaking and writing about the implication of AI in generosity, just overall, just really thinking about the future, kind of staying a few years ahead.
Well, you've definitely been a few years ahead. I think you're a thought leader in the sector leading this conversation. And in that, I've learned a ton from you watching your evolution and learning how AI is impacting and informing the sector. You are speaking here specifically about the Curiosity Code. I love that title, about being more human. So for our nonprofits, what do you think they should be leaning into AI for? And what do you think they should be focused on right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a balance. I mean, like any technology, it has the power to either amplify good or bad, right? Depending on who's using it. So I look at AI as a moral imperative and absolutely a responsibility of the nonprofit sector to amplify impact. And so not using it is no longer an option. It'd be like the idea of like not using the internet to amplify your voice. I mean, really the equivalent of that, but even more profound. But at the same time, do it in a way that's really responsible. And so for the last 8 years, I've been working in AI with nonprofit organizations, and I've seen about half of them really succeed and half of them really fail. In not the use of the technology, but in the adoption, like the widespread adoption and kind of cultural adoption of the technology. And I started really reflecting about a year ago on why that was, because the process that every organization went through was the same. In an AI, it's a little prescriptive, like you're trying to identify what you're trying to solve, and then you apply a certain approach and data and models. And all that to say, like, well, why were half the organizations not successful? And it had far less to do with data and models and far more to do with people and culture. And so I reflecting on that, started really thinking about like what is inherently human in the age of AI. And philanthropy being an inherently human endeavor in a business, I mean, I think it hopefully will continue to rest in the human endeavor for a long time, is that it really has to do not with like strategy or creativity or even empathy. And because those are all things that we bring to the table, but AI also augments pretty heavily. But it has more to do with curiosity and the idea that AI will never be curious on its own. It can pretend to be curious, but then it's following instructions. But that humans, essentially, that becomes our responsibility. It becomes our role to bring curiosity into our organization. But that fundamentally changes how we've been hiring, promoting, incentivizing work within nonprofits. I spent 20 years essentially hiring subject matter experts that were really good in one domain. And I was really bad at incentivizing questions more than answers throughout 20 years of being a leader. And so I think we're at this pivotal moment where we have to completely flip the script on what the future of nonprofit work looks like, because we're now armed with technology that knows something about everything.
Yeah.
So let's stop hiring the subject matter experts and let's start incentivizing curiosity in like really innovative, bold ways within our nonprofit organizations.
Oh, I love that. So you said we're at this pivot point, though. What do you think we're pivoting toward?
Well, we'll either pivot toward, this is like truly an inflection point. I know it's like so cliche to say that, but the inflection point is that we will either start using AI and automation to essentially make giving more transactional, or the opposite, which I tend to wake up hopefully, hoping for and believing, and I have to like every like last breath that I'll ever, have will be to encourage us to really use that automation technology to make giving more human.
Yeah.
And so I think that is that inflection point, that we have technology that has the power to do both. And so if we, stop and pause and think about the fact that we need to use AI and evaluate AI, number one, that it is centered around trust, that it preserves and protects trust, but that it will, will amplify whatever we create it to be. And so if we create it to be, allow us to be more human, then it will help us be more human, to use that dividend of time to do more human things. Or are we just going to automate ourselves out of the equation. And I think that will have really negative consequences long term. So curiosity ends up being, I think for a lot of people, I think the easiest way to see a future and not feel like I have to be a data scientist. Like it's rooted in technology, but it's inherently human. And so I think it's how we approach our work every day that is going to make the biggest difference.
I was definitely a reluctant adopter to utilizing AI. And the thing that sort of turned that needle for me was understanding with your work the idea that if the nonprofit sector and good people doing good things are not informing AI, then we don't have that language model happening. Right. And that was a powerful sort of turning point for me to think about it in that like human curiosity, person to person, how we use it in that way.
The nonprofit sector has a superpower right now because the private sector will act predictably in the sense that they will scale AI at any cost, right? Because like capital markets will always demand scale over safety or scale over human. And the nonprofit sector, by lack of those same financial incentives, like we don't have shareholders that are like, you only have to scale at any cost. And so like I find ourselves at this moment where we have this opportunity to have absolute clarity about AI that does not promote human flourishing is actually just not good for humanity. Yeah. We're able to see that and inform that in ways that the private sector can't. And so while we have that clarity, if we're not part of that and we're not lending our voice to that conversation in like really profound ways, then it's sad because the future of AI will reflect the ideas and dreams and wishes of people today.
Right.
So our sector just needs to be like super deep in AI to make sure that it mirrors the better side of humanity.
Well, and thinking about AI being developed instead of for capital outcomes, for human outcomes, for solutions around housing, for solutions around direct service. I mean, that's a powerful thing to think about.
Yeah, and I don't think any private company wants to use AI to do harm.
Right.
But their incentives are different. We shouldn't be surprised by that. And so I think for our sector, that if AI is not used to bring people together, then it's probably not good for our sector. It becomes very easy to evaluate. And so, and the idea that responsibility, innovation aren't mutually exclusive, like we can have both. Yes. This means that we have to reflect and be thoughtful about how we're going to use any technology, not just AI, but any technology to amplify the good that we want to see in the world.
Susan Kramer, welcome to Raise Conference.
Thank you.
We are so excited to have you here at Raise Nation Radio and on the Fundraising Elevator podcast. You are a fundraising consultant. I want to ask you first just to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about your specialty. What do you work in?
So I have a 30-year career in the nonprofit sector. And about 7 years ago, I decided what would I regret not doing at the end of my life. And it was launch my own consultancy. So as I entered year 7, I look at what it is that's working. And the clients I work with, I coach, mentor, and train development professionals. And when we work together, it's usually weekly. I'm their coach, taskmaster. I always say that expert athletes are not on the field without coaches.
Yes.
So I coach the athletes to be their best selves.
Amazing.
And they get results.
Yeah.
I also help start up nonprofits. There's ideation. We want to be a nonprofit, and I have my 501c3, but I'm not really sure how to start. I get a lot of that. How do we start? Where do I raise money? Where do I find money? And then I unpack revenue streams and understand which revenue streams are working and which we should lean into a little bit more and which maybe we need to not deal with because they're not producing the kind of revenue. And I'm always data-driven. So one of the differentiators for my team is data and data-driven results so that it's not all intuition, it's also data.
Real information. Well, you're here to talk a lot about major donor work. In your session, you're going to be teaching about major donor work. I think it's so important right now as we're seeing the loss of federal funding. Organizations are changing how they fundraise. What do you think right now nonprofits need to be focusing in on to increase their major donor support?
That their major donors already exist in their database.
Yes.
It's like you have a donor base and you have a database. And most nonprofits always focus on the donor base. Who are our donors? What are our donors giving? And I know nonprofits with 1,000 donors, but 6,000 people in their database.
Yes.
And they're never dealing with the 5,000 other people that are there because they're not donors. So that's when we apply data or simple. It doesn't have to be like some advanced search engine. just do a sort by zip code and pull your high-end zip codes out of your database and then start identifying who are those people that live in your city's high-end zip codes that are already in your database. So what I think nonprofits need to know about major gift fundraising is your next major donor is hiding in plain sight.
I love that.
And they're
It's
there.
true. Yeah.
You do not need to walk around your city and take pictures of every building with every name, because I also like to say rich does not equal giving to you. So it's very nice that they're wealthy, but it does not equal giving to you. So if they're already involved or already have, their name on your list, that's the place to start.
Yeah. Well, the cost of onboarding and cultivating a new donor to you is so much more expensive than bringing along the donor base that you already have, or the database, activating the database you already have. So I love that you give really practical advice for organizations of where to even start and how to move that needle, because I think it's needed so much right now.
Can I give you a story?
Yes, please do.
So I have a client who did a mail appeal.
Uh-huh.
Great. A mail appeal or a peer-to-peer fundraising, crowdfunding campaigns. Okay, they're great. I think they're fishing expeditions.
Sure, yeah.
So it was a mail appeal. And somebody gave $36. Okay. And I said, well, let's sort by zip code, high-end zip code.
Yeah.
So we do the sort, and we find the people in the high-end zip code, and this donor at $36. I said, all right, now let's Google him. Let's Google the guy and see. So he has a class action lawsuit, and he has recovered billions of dollars for his clients. Now, let's talk about that. We found on Google that he has a business that generates billions of dollars in claims, which means $36 is like pocket change.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you need to call this guy.
Yeah.
And kind of like begin to try to figure out how to make him your best friend and ask him why he gave to the campaign to begin with. So that's just like one tiny example of it's right in front of you. You just have to unpack it.
Christina, welcome to Organization Radio.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited
glad
to be
you're here. Well, so I want to first help the audience understand a little bit about you. So you are a consultant with Command Joy. You are an attorney. You are a fundraiser. And you are here at Raise this year to be speaking about how you turned LinkedIn and Instagram into your tools of choice to really maximize fundraising. So tell us a little bit about Command Joy and what you do.
Yeah, so I am actually the CEO and founder of Command Joy Company, LLC. I started the organization about a year ago. And really what I focused on was infrastructure safety for staff and communities with organizations. So I did that work. I loved doing that work. So I'm an attorney, like you just said. For the first 8 years of my career, I was a prosecutor. And I focused on how to help women and girls be more safe. So, my work really was about domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and sexual assault. And through that journey of being a prosecutor, one thing I discovered is our policies matter, duh. So I went into policy work for a couple years, and then I really leaned into the fact that nonprofits and other mission-based organizations really are the backbone of support for survivors and marginalized communities, because the government can't do it all.
Yeah.
So a part of that work that I did with nonprofits is I went to a nonprofit, it's a national nonprofit that was focused on gender-based violence in the law. And I became the chief executive of external relations, where I oversaw fundraising, communications, messaging, and partnerships for about 4.5 years. And when I started my business, like I said, I wasn't really focused on fundraising until recently. So in January, when the administration changed and a lot of nonprofits started struggling because of funding slashing, a lot of nonprofits started coming and reaching out to me asking for help with fundraising. Because like I said, I raised $11 million in 4 years. And that $11 million wasn't just government funding. It was private philanthropy fundraising. It was corporate fundraising, really because I was an accidental fundraiser. I had no idea what I was doing.
So many fundraisers are. That's
I just knew how to interpret what we were doing at the nonprofit legally into how people actually spoke. And I think a part of that was my training as a prosecutor, because I had to be before juries explaining these huge legal concepts to regular everyday people. So after I started getting asked by nonprofits to help them, I decided to expand Command Joy and really to do some fundraising, consulting, and communications messaging, because your mission needs money. You can have as much passion in the world, but without the money to power that passion, it's just a dream.
So this is your second time at Raise. We're here at the Raise conference live, and you're presenting while you're here.
Yes.
But you told me when you first sat down that you had a pretty incredible experience last year. I want to hear what happened after your conference attendance last year.
Yeah, so last year was my first time at Raise. I actually brought one of my team members with me. And one of the things we had really been struggling with is how to incorporate donor advised funds into our fundraising strategy. We knew what they were, but like most people, we were like, we know what individual giving is, but how do we unlock this part of individual giving? So we went to a session about donor advised funding, just thinking we wanted to learn more. And through the strategies that session taught us, we participated in what's called DAF Day, Donor Advised Fund Day, and raised $16,000 off of one day because of the Raise conference. I mean, how much more ROI can you get from being in a conference?
That is amazing. Well, now you're back to speak.
Yes.
You're speaking about the fact that you use social media really to increase a lot of your revenue. I want to know a little bit about this world, because social media is changing fast.
Yes.
A lot of nonprofits, I think, struggle with how to maximize their social media. You have really used LinkedIn and Instagram as your tools. So what do you think in that space a nonprofit should be focused on?
So I think social media is an untapped resource for nonprofits. A lot of nonprofits are scared of using social media as, really period, but scared of using social media as a fundraising tool. And I think that a lot of development directors, chief executive of external relations like I was, and CEOs are afraid of putting their personal branding, mixing that with the organization's branding to build funds. So one thing that I did, because like I said, I was an accidental fundraiser, I didn't know what were the right things and the wrong things to do with fundraising. So I really boosted my LinkedIn account to make it attractive in terms of my professional self. So
your personal account was what you were
my personal
leveraging.
account is not the organization's account. Because when you're looking at reaching out to funders, they don't really want to talk to the organization.
Right.
LinkedIn is a professional resource that is people to people.
Yeah.
So how do you as a person reach out to a funder who may not be the executive director or the CEO of that foundation, but maybe a program officer that you may have something in common with? And how would you know that? Because you're doing your grant prospecting and your research on LinkedIn. So I have been able to leverage LinkedIn in a way that has really kind of been amazing for the organization I was with and for me. From one LinkedIn DM, I got a $600,000 1-year unrestricted gift from a major foundation.
Wow.
From sending a direct message on LinkedIn, not a grant application. Now the process wasn't quick. It took me a year to steadily send a program officer a DM every couple of months, just saying I was thinking about the work that they are doing, and I wanted to highlight the work of my organization to them. And then one day I got a response back and they said, let's hop on the phone.
Amazing.
So I've also been able,
Congratulations.
also been able to get 5-figure gifts from foundations with the same strategy. Also have been able to highlight the work of the organization and have funders who started out as a $30,000 funder give us over $250,000 in 1 year.
Wow. Because
they were on my LinkedIn. They were liking my posts. They were commenting on my posts. And this was from my personal page.
People to people.
People to people. It's not just about sending a newsletter. It's not just about making a call. How do you leverage tools that everyday people use, like social media, to make those connections with grant funders?
Matt, hello and welcome to Raise Nation Radio.
Well, thank you, Sam. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. We are at the Raise conference, and you are presenting at the Raise conference. So I want to be able to talk a little bit today about both your organization and also what you're presenting on. So first, Matt Bitzegaio, DonorDock, you are a former fundraiser turned into a tech solution for the nonprofit sector.
So I actually was never in fundraising myself. No, I've been in the CRM space now for about 23 years and spent a lot of time working with like the big monolithic CRMs over the course of my career, worked with a lot of nonprofits, actually built a kind of nonprofit add-on for Microsoft's big CRM.
Yeah.
And just kept seeing over and over again how for like those small to even mid-sized organizations, how it just was so hard to ever get it to work well for people.
Folks using Excel spreadsheets need to find a CRM. What makes DonorDock that solution?
We really built it. So when we think back, we've been in the market since like 2018. Before we started actually selling it, we worked with a lady out of our hometown named Babs Kohler. Babs was a fundraiser. Babs liked to do things where she would write everything down on a napkin, like real Excel was a stretch. And we used to have a mantra of like, let's build something for Babs.
Amazing.
And so that was kind of our North Star, is we were trying to build something that was intuitive for people, that was cost effective, that was easy to use, because we kept seeing like, if you have a CRM or a donor management tool that's difficult, people don't use it. And then why even why have it? B, you end up with bad data. The only thing worse than having no data is making decisions on bad data. And so I think we've always had that focus on building something that works well for that smaller organization. And so even as we've added to the product, it's certainly evolved over the last 7 years, but we've kept that in the forefront of let's keep it easy to use, intuitive, and while it's powerful, it's not overwhelming. And I think that's why it kind of works for people who are looking to get into that first CRM, maybe that they, jumping off of Excel or worse off of, notebooks and paper. And we still see that. So,
Well, and I think we've been in the sector now for almost 3 decades. And that's the number one sort of challenge or crisis organizations run up against, is that they have a tool that's just big and hard to navigate. And then as they transition through staffing, it doesn't get updated and bad data. So we've really appreciated DonorDock's entry into the marketplace, because I think that you are offering a solution that's needed right now.
Yeah, I agree. We're in this age right now where it's like data is becoming so important and powerful. We come from a time of CRM where, we would ask people to enter notes and activities, and a lot of that was really kind of self-serving for the organization. Like we were asking people to be historians essentially of what is happening, because we know that we're going to have people leave the organization. We don't want that knowledge walking out the door. And so it was always this feeling of like, why am I having to spend time putting these notes in or putting these activities in? Well, now we live in this time where that unstructured data is like gold for us to be able to help them understand the relationship at a deeper level in a much easier way through tools like AI and things that we're using. And so having a tool that's actually easy to use to get that data in there, you get so much value out of it if you do that. And now you're getting value as a fundraiser. You're not feeling like I'm putting this in here for somebody else later. I'm actually going to see value out of that data right now.
Well, so you're speaking here at the conference and you're speaking about fundraising in these challenging times. So what do you think nonprofits, especially nonprofits you work with, need to be most focused on right now?
I think we live in a time right now where we wear doing more as like a badge of honor. Like we have this constant should list that just keeps growing. Like I should talk to this donor, I should reach out here, I should be doing all of these things. And sometimes then because that should list gets so long, we get paralyzed to actually go start doing anything. And so with this like culture of always doing more, I think it's imperative that fundraisers actually start to focus less on getting more done and focus their time and energy on getting the most important things done every single day. And to me, as a fundraiser, the most important things that we can do every day are building human relationships with our donors. And so that, if you think about the environment that we're in or that our customers are in, where there is this constant drive to get more done, there's all these new things coming out all the time. There's new fundraising methodologies, there's new technology, there's all, it leads to a lot of like overwhelming, overworking, burnout, which leads to turnover, which just makes all of this even more challenging. So, we at DonorDock, we just really believe that there is a path to helping these organizations focus on the most important things every single day. And I think that not only leads to less burnout, I think it leads to more fulfilling work. And I can go to bed every night knowing that I moved the needle today and helping move my mission forward. So.
Bradley Martin of Feathr, welcome to Raisation Radio. We're so excited to have you join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm a big super fan of what Feathr's doing. So I want to talk a little bit first and have you introduce who you are and what the Feathr sphere or the Feathr flock is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So again, Bradley Martin. I lead marketing at Feathr, but Feathr is a marketing platform built specifically for nonprofits. And so what we are attempting to do at Feathr is ultimately to help nonprofits grow. But the way we think about doing that is by helping organizations maximize their visibility and doing that and trying to give the tools to nonprofit organizations that for-profit organizations have access to. And then not only trying to give them the tools, but make it easy to use those tools and access them.
That's the exact frame that struck me when I started looking at all the tools that you offer, was that, this is what the for-profit world is using, and the nonprofit sector should be engaging in these tools as well. I liken Feathr to the example of when I'm shopping for a new pair of shoes, and then that pair of shoes follows me around the internet. That a campaign that is being run, an event that is coming up, can also be following me around the internet like that, because we're in the fundraising events space, and at the Fundraising Elevator, we talk all the time about fundraising events and how to help people grow their events. But we're talking typically about the gala model, where we have a very focused donor base we're designing to. And what your tool, to me, is opening up is how do we design to the beer festival, the walk, the big festival events, and capitalize and mobilize that audience. And you're here today talking at the Raise conference about a case study. Can you talk to us a little bit about how the Feathr tool is mobilizing in that environment, like a festival environment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you run into is, you see all these ads that feel almost serendipitous, right? Like, right. Like, and you're like,
I needed that.
Yeah, I needed that. Or, how did they know that? And so what really is happening, as wherever you're located with your device, the searching you're doing on the internet, the things that you're reading on the internet, these all leave breadcrumbs behind about what you're interested in, right? And so, again, these platforms that the for-profit companies have been using for years to draw those insights, we have brought to the nonprofit sector in a way that's approachable. But I think specifically for those events and things like that, like one of the things, I just came back from an event, and I knew this was possible, but I experienced it for the first time myself, was I went to the ASAE, which is a conference for association, and I was there, and I was getting an Uber, right? And Uber serves ads on their website. And one of the people who were had a booth at the event was Visit Canada. And I got an ad for Visit Canada while I was waiting for an Uber to go to the conference.
It's a coincidence.
Right. That was done through Feathr, right? And it was one of those moments where it came full circle to me that I was like, I'm about a mile from the conference hall, and they are geo-fencing around the conference, and so I think there's just such an interesting thing of these are techniques that have been used by large organizations for a really long time that, again, we're bringing to organizations that when you're holding your gala, when you're doing, having your event, you can either advertise to people before the event, after the event, during the event, in a way that it isn't really possible with any other platform in the nonprofit space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I want to ask you specifically about what you think nonprofits should be focusing in on right now. We have organizations going through a lot of change. We have a lot of funding changes and challenges that have been happening with loss of federal grants and things like that. So as organizations are thinking about new ways to raise money, they're thinking about how do we pivot our team and the effort and where our focus goes. What do you think nonprofits need to be focused on right now?
I'm going to zoom way out for just a second. And, you and I have talked on your podcast before, but I think still this stands true. The organizations really need to own their own visibility, right? Like, I think one of the things when we think about funding, even, it's like organizations, I think, and leaders in organizations kind of sometimes have a little bit of this mentality of these things are just happening to us versus us taking ownership of how to make sure we're visible, how to own our own funding, how to do the things that, to make sure that we are
driving.
Really driving it. That's a good way to say it. And I think my concern is that, again, I'll just go back to kind of this thought of like all these things are just happening to us versus us having our own ownership over it so that when unexpected things happen, we can react versus, and we can react in a way that we actually feel like we control it, And so I think what we've seen at Feathr recently is so many organizations deciding to take those things into their own hands, to saying we are going to take the responsibility of funding, but funding comes through visibility. And so you really do have to make sure your organization is seen. And we talk to so many organizations who feel unseen, unheard, and Feathr's goal is to help them feel more seen.
Well, I think, 100 years ago, not even that, 50 years ago, the focus was on, I would drive through my community and see billboards that were brand campaigns helping me feel why this matters, why we need to be focused on this in our community. And that form of messaging and marketing has really shifted into a digital space. And so I love that Feathr's developed a tool that makes it very accessible for the nonprofit.
I love Susan's story about turning a low dollar first time gift into a 6-figure gift. But wow, Christina's leverage of LinkedIn to do the same is awesome. We're going to take a short break right now for a word from our partners, and then we're going to jump back in with some myth busting.
Great.
Ready for your hard work to yield more funds at your next event? Join us at Elevate, a nonprofit fundraising event conference designed to bring our community together and make planning successful events easier. Register today for this hybrid conference on March 3rd and 4th, 2026 in Portland, Oregon, or join us online from anywhere. This isn't just another conference. You'll walk away with battle-tested strategies, hands-on tools, and proven templates that top fundraisers use to raise millions. Your mission deserves fully funded success. Register today at swaimstrategies.com.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking to thought leaders about key areas of focus, and the theme of being more human and thinking out of the box was definitely a strong message. What else did they share with you at Raise?
Well, I think sometimes in the learning environment, you get a lot of input of things you should do. In fact, it's one of my least favorite words, talking about should. So I asked folks to do a little myth busting for me and to dive into the conversation about what really is going on and what are some myths we could bust. So let's jump back in. Barbara O'Reilly. Well, is there a myth in the fundraising world or the nonprofit sector that you want to bust?
Yes, donor fatigue.
Oh,
donor fatigue.
Ooh, do tell. Bust away.
I saw this firsthand, fundraising for disasters. That and when I was at the American Red Cross, it was we were just stewarding. It had been about 6 months from the South Asian tsunami. And then Hurricane Katrina hit, and then there were 3 more hurricanes that hit within a month, I think, of Katrina. And then there was a Pakistan earthquake, and within that sort of even 8 weeks alone, which was about that time that all of those disasters were happening, people were still giving. People were still wanting to say, "How can I help?"
Yeah.
Even in the midst of one of the most extraordinary outpouring of generosity for, at the time, the largest natural disaster that hit the U.S. And I see this now. I've seen this with other disasters. I've seen this across the last 5 years for sure. Giving continues to grow.
Yeah.
And donors still want to help. And that's our human. That's our human nature, right? Unless it's like a person's a sociopath, like that's what we're driven to do, is to be empathetic to others.
Yeah.
So it shows up in giving. However, if we don't connect with them and stay and keep those lines of communication open, then donors are going to get tired. They're just going to go elsewhere. They're going to show their generosity somewhere else.
Right. The giving doesn't go away.
No.
It just leaves you.
That's it. And so I think it's not donor fatigue. I believe strongly that it's fundraiser fatigue, that is, or leadership fatigue. We don't know what to say. We've said it too many times. People, how do we stay relevant to our donors in a way that will keep them? Or maybe we're not relevant anymore to them, and just thinking like, well, they've stopped giving to us. We saw really good reactivation from lapsed donors during the pandemic, because these were long lapsed donors who now suddenly came back and made a new gift because of the extraordinary circumstances we were living through. So I think we have to stop blaming donor fatigue as the reason why donors will not continue to give during a moment of crisis.
Yeah. Nathan Chappell. Well, I was going to ask you a question about myth busting in the sector, about if there's a myth out there that you want to bust. I think you just highlighted one, that responsibility, innovation are not mutually exclusive. But is there something else that you would tell our nonprofit friends?
I think there might be still some people that are hoping that AI is plateaued, and that it's a fad, or that the pace of innovation will slow. And that's an absolute myth. I mean, the reality is that while we're surrounded by all types of technologies and automations that have changed the way, the internet has changed the way that we operate in society and business. But for all intents and purposes, AI is unlike any other technology. It's considered exponential. And that means that it actually is not dependent on humans to advance, right? So AI is actually now improving itself in a pretty fast pace. So if you're out there thinking that, like, well, I just need to wait a little while and then, things will slow down or I'll catch up, it's absolutely a myth. I mean, the reality is that the pace of innovation will continue to increase, and those that figure out how to leverage AI will have a distinct advantage and look noticeably different from those that do not. Like from a sense of relevancy, of like understanding, like a nonprofit that is using AI knows its constituents in intimate ways and can activate those constituents in real time, versus those that are still like Dear Donor or just doing like really basic segmentation. I think that delta between like those that do versus those that don't will be profound in the next few years. And so, hopefully we can bust that myth and get people to really lean in and read a book, follow podcasts, like just really dive in deep and figure out how, their organizations can really thrive in the age of AI.
Well, I think that as AI continues to advance, it might allow humans to slow a little and do some of the tasks so that humans can focus on the humaning.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's the whole point. It's not to replace humans. It's to amplify our intentions. And then to be really thoughtful about the dividend of time. Like if I'm going to save 20% of my time by using really smart AI, whatever, then I have to be intentional about what I do with that dividend of time. If I don't, I'm just going to send more emails. And there's this saying that if you have a broken thing and if you put something digital on top of it, you'll have a digital broken thing. And that's not what we need. We need to be really thoughtful about, what are we trying to achieve? Set out to achieve those things, but then take that dividend of time and ideally use that to be more human. Like if I save 20% of my time, that's an extra day a week that I could like go to lunch with that person that I haven't had time to go to lunch with because I'm so busy sending out lots of emails and things like that.
Susan Kramer. Well, so I'm interested to know if you think there's a myth in the sector right now that you could bust about fundraising.
Myth busting. Yes.
Okay.
There is abundance in the world.
There is. I love that.
Absolute abundance.
There is enough.
There's always enough.
Yeah.
And people never got poor from giving.
Right.
And generous people are generous people.
Yes.
And if you are in relationship with the donor, they will let you know when they're at capacity. They'll let you know. But if your gift is a transactional gift and you don't know the donor well, you'll never know if your gift is a capacity gift. And many times I've excavated $1,000 donors who are giving six figures other places, but my client doesn't know the capacity.
Yeah.
Because they're not in conversation.
Such beautiful and brilliant advice. I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Ask them.
Well, I'm excited about your session.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up today, I want to know, is there a myth out there in the fundraising nonprofit world that you feel like you could bust?
Yes.
Yep. Excellent.
there are many myths that I feel like I can bust. One of them is don't mix personal and corporate.
Sure.
Mix them.
Yeah.
It's not that you are your job, but you are the best representation of your organization online. Post what you're doing. Post where you are. Post what your organization is doing, even if you're not directly a part of it, because funders are on social media too. And what a better organic way to get on their algorithms than to actually talk about the great work that you're doing.
Such great advice. I love it. Christina, thank you for joining us. Thank you for stopping by the studio. Matt Bitzegaio, is there a myth out there that you want to bust? Something that you feel like you hear all the time and you're like, no, not true.
Yeah. Well, I think it actually goes back to that the myth that to be successful, we have to get more done all the time. Like that feels like something that you see it in action in so many nonprofits where we need to plan another event, we need to do another campaign, we need to do all these things, or we should be doing all of these things. And I think that the reality is that you can be very, very successful doing less.
That's true.
But as long as when you're doing less, you're focused on the things that actually move the needle.
Yeah, and doing them well.
Well, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you and I share a similar belief that the word should needs to leave the vocabulary of the nonprofit sector. Yeah. And we have often laughed about the fact that there is sort of this like pile of should that sits there. Bradley Martin, do you have any myths that you would bust for us?
You know, I'm going to go off something you just said.
Yeah.
I'm changing this in my head in real time.
Okay.
But I think, you know, going back to that billboard idea, right? Yeah. I think that from a digital marketing perspective, there's a little bit of this myth out there that is that I need to be able to directly attribute every dollar I make back to the advertising I'm doing. And so there's a little bit of this thing, there's this pressure from boards, from executive directors, that if you spend $1, I need to see how much you're making for that dollar, right? And I think if you go back just a little bit to how people buy and how people interact with organizations or how people donate, they don't donate off the first ad they see or the first impression they see. They need to be reminded over and over and over again, right? And so this is where some of the most success we see for organizations is when we do the retargeting ads, which is what you talked about the shoes following you around the internet, right? You go look at a pair of shoes, and they follow you around the internet until you buy them.
But you said you liked it.
Yeah,
come back.
Right, exactly. But I think that's the campaigns we see the most success with, because 84% of donors don't give the first time they go to a website, right? And so we can follow those people around the internet, right, and help stay in front of them.
Yeah.
But I think the thing I want to be careful about when I say about this myth is that they may not click on that ad and come back and give a donation. They may just go directly back to the website.
Yeah.
They may come across you at a local event. They may go, oh, right, I'm aware of them because I've continued to see them digitally over the last several months. And so I think just understanding that visibility is really, really important.
Yeah.
And that you may be doing yourself a disservice when you just measure everything through direct attribution, right?
Yeah.
Or through direct correlation to revenue, in that sometimes when we raise the water level of our visibility, you'll see funding come that may not always directly track back, but it's because you're broadly more visible.
Well, once upon a time, 7 touches in a marketing world were kind of our target. Now, in this digital age, cell phones, immediate access, lots of attention, disbursement, we're seeing 10, 15 is the average. Yeah. And it is a big ask of a staff member to try to be tracking and engaging donors 15 times. Yeah. And so tools like yours are such a great resource. And I appreciate you sharing a little bit about the Feathr world and a little bit about what nonprofits can be doing in the marketing space. Thank you for joining us here at RaseNation Radio. And thank you for joining the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up.
Sam, thank you so much for bringing us these great conversations from Raise. It makes me feel like I didn't miss out on everything. If folks are interested in joining Raise next year, like Sam said earlier, it will be in Chicago in September of 2026. And as Sam said earlier, if you really want to talk events before then, join us at Elevate, March 3rd and 4th. It's a hybrid conference that specifically is fundraising event school. Yeah, we're not going to talk about everything fundraising. Nope. We're going to talk about fundraising events. It's designed to help you raise more money at your event. Thank you all for tuning into our special episode with RaseNation Radio.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced by Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by John Collier. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group, and voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Hey y'all, it's Kristen. Before we leave, I want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, and subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, share it with a friend. Leave us a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thanks so much for being here and tuning in.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life. Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the Fundraising Elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristen for your programming and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at swaimstrategies.com. You can also find the link in our show notes.